Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto. And my partner, Dave Michels, is joining me today. How are we doing, Dave?
I'm doing grand, just grand.
You say that all the time. I wonder what it's going to be like when you have something that's really grand, like winning the lottery or something. Do they have a lottery where you are nowadays?
I have no idea, actually.
Oh, okay, time something to look into. Anyway, interesting. A vendor called Boom Collaboration that Dave and I have been following for a few years. They make some pretty good products and some peripherals that use for collaboration. They published a list a short while ago about some tips that they believe will improve the experience of room video conferencing. They called it top 10. I'm not really sure if it's top 10, but they called it top 10. We want to go through their list. We want to augment it with our
Well,
list.
we had to change the list because David and I had a vehement discussion, vehement agreement and vehement disagreement on their top 10. So we came up with our own list of what we consider things you can do to improve your meetings.
Things you can do. Yeah, we both agree that we're not going to call these the top 10 because there may be others as well. But so the first one on the list, Dave, you want to go through is the concept of acoustics and lighting?
Yeah, I think acoustics and lighting is, I think we've seen tremendous progress in the typical enterprise boardroom, but that's about it. I think that there's a big problem with acoustics and lighting in particularly home offices and these BYOB rooms and what are your thoughts, David?
Well, we need to separate the two, in my opinion. There's been a little bit, but you notice I'm kind of flat in the background. I'm not really, I still have a backlight here. You can even see what the backlight's doing to separate me from there we go, the pick hits badges that we have from our shows. But you need to have key light and fill light. And if you haven't ever heard about that, key light, fill light, backlights called 3-point lighting. It's very important. It makes a very big difference in how things are looked at. So I would agree that unless you're really lighting a room for video, unless you have the right amount of lumens that use a table that gives you the right reflection, it's a problem. And people are
Well,
not.
windows are a big problem in both departments, acoustics and lighting, actually. But you don't have a window behind you. I've actually got a window behind me, and you can't tell that right now because I'm actually in the headquarters cartoon office. But the windows could be a big problematic, and the problem with windows, of course, is they're not a problem in the morning, and they might be a problem in the afternoon, or vice versa. And so, because everyone knows the Earth is going around, I mean, the sun is going around the Earth, and so, but if you want to improve your meetings, I think a really good step for enterprises is to revisit acoustics and lighting. And you got any tips around this, David? I mean, besides you described the problems and stuff like that. Um, for example, I was thinking about some microphones we've talked about. Uh, there's pretty good microphones you can get for inexpensive amount of money that you can put on a home office, and then there's incredible office microphones for meeting rooms.
Yeah, the microphones and meeting room situation, the audio pickup in the rooms has improved drastically, and we'll come back to that in one of our tips because that's only if you've got modern gear.
That's right.
Uh,
I leaped ahead there. Sorry about that. What
but
about stuff like this, David? What about stuff like this?
Well, when you're using either, officially Sonex is the brand of foam or any other foam that's sound absorption, you're trying to prevent reflections of audio because you don't want the sound to be coming to the microphone and then coming from a reflection as well. It sounds reverberant. It sounds hard to understand. But again, the AI algorithms are helping with a lot of that. So I think we're not going to need to treat the rooms as much as we did before. We are going to need to make sure that the base lighting is of a decent quality and that the separation is there and that they're
Well,
using the
well,
right
our
tape.
audience didn't get to hear the prior conversation, but if I hear you correctly, Mr. Danto, you're saying we should rely on AI. Is that what you're saying? Because that's not what I think you were saying earlier.
No, I'm saying that for audio conditioning, there are some really awesome capabilities now being built into most of the room systems. And what was something where you would have to make sure the mics are close and there are no glass walls and all the rest of it is now being
Yeah,
tackled by stacked audio algorithms, which are technically AI. So I'm
yeah.
very impressed with that. That's what I call real AI, as opposed to a summary that's often wrong. Real
Yeah,
AI
we both we
can
ran
fix
into
and
that
right.
info. It was an Infocom, right? Because we ran into the Cisco booth, we ran into it the Nariva booth. They both had this new gear, new microphones, and yeah, and faster, better, cheaper. We get that, but they also both made the point that it sets up much faster than the Cisco ceiling mics and the Nariva. What was the
The
family?
HDLs. They're all
HDX.
you press a
Yeah,
button
uh,
and they're HDL too. You press a button and it sets up for the room. So a lot of that's
yeah.
built into the gear.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. It's actually absolutely amazing.
But
All right, next
nothing
one.
touches lighting. Next one was the
Um,
idea of the equipment, and are you getting the right stuff that you need?
it's more than just the equipment. It's the equipment to the room. And I think people make a mistake about this. They get the right equipment, and there's a lot of advantage to just standardizing on equipment. Then you've got spare parts, you can move things around, everybody knows how to use it. But the thing is, a lot of this equipment is designed specifically for certain types or sizes of rooms. And maybe because of hand-me-down policies, and one room got upgraded, so it follows down. Whatever. But I think we find a lot enterprises have the wrong equipment or the right equipment in the wrong room or the right equipment in the wrong room. I don't know what it is, but something's not compatible here.
Well, if people watch the talking points reviews that I do of some of the video bars that I've done over the last year, I do them upstairs in my dining room, which is about 6 feet away. I'm sitting. If you can't get 6 feet off of a system, you have to call it a small room system, which many of these manufacturers do. But then if you're buying 50 of them to deploy, I'm sure some of them are going into rooms that are further away than the 6 feet, and the camera's struggling to make a decent shot. It gets pixelized, it's on an electronic end of the zoom, and it doesn't look very good. So I think it's very important to understand what the optimal distance is for the device that you're buying. And many of the manufacturers have multiple versions of cameras that you can get, and getting the right one is actually really very important.
Yeah. All right, the next one here is actually really kind of tricky, and there's almost a little evolution here that's working against us. I'm going to go back to the old days. I'm going to say AI 1.0 here, but but at one point we had really good transcription technology. I'm going to call it AI 1.0, and all this, it didn't happen live, but after the meeting was done, you got a nice transcript, and we kind of got used to that. You got used to that too, didn't you, David?
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
and then with the newer AI, I'll say current AI, current AI, the transcripts have become so powerful and so capable. They can do it real time. They can do all this stuff that now they don't actually turn them on necessarily. And so maybe explain that one a
Yeah,
little bit,
it,
David,
it's
because
got it's got a few nuanced problems, but that are really serious. First of all, in the past, as you point out, if I wanted to record a meeting, I'd record a meeting, and then I'd take that recording and get it transcribed. And it was an expensive and bulky process, but it worked. Now with AI, you're kind of capturing every meeting. And I say kind of importantly because maybe you are and maybe you're not. At the end of a meeting where there's AI engaged, you're getting a summary of what it was, and oftentimes summary is wrong. But let's not go into accuracy at this point. Every time you do that, you're creating a discoverable document. So if there's ever a lawsuit, you've got to have a retention policy. Do you have to hold that for 5 months, 6 months, a year? So that all creates a lot of compliance issues around that. Then there are people who believe, oh, since we've got AI, I don't need to record the meeting anymore. I had that happen to me
I
twice.
only need the summary.
Right.
That's
I
all I
haven't
need.
happened to me twice with the actual vendor that whose platform we were talking about, where I asked 5 times, I need a transcript so that I don't have to take notes and I can pay attention to what you're saying, but I need to go back and get the exact words. And the person I was speaking to said, of course we've got it, of course we've got it. And they didn't have it because they had AI on and they assumed it was doing it, and it wasn't. It was giving me a David spoke to these two people for the last half hour and said that yellow was a nice color. No, that's not what I said, and that missed all the detail
Well,
that I
yellow is a nice
spoke.
color. Come on, David. You got to give them that.
Yellow
Yeah.
is a nice color, yes, but the bottom line was we had to actually have the meeting again because in that case I needed the transcript, and the platform representative didn't know that it was missing. So that's a big issue. Between compliance and retention and accuracy and whether or not we're over relying on AI to do the job for us because we don't understand it very well, it's a sticky situation.
Yeah, so this third one is know your transcript, know where it is, know if it's going to exist, know who's responsible for it, know etc. Don't make any assumptions. There's no right answers here except for just don't assume. That's the
Exactly.
right answer. Um, okay, the next one here is overcomplicating the setup. Now, this is a tricky one, and David and I discussed this one a little bit because in so many ways, I mean, I remember going back into the earliest meeting rooms back in the 90s that I was experiencing, and the remote control was the size of a small Winnebago. I mean, it was just ridiculous, and it had more buttons on it than you could possibly figure out. So I think that in many
Was my
ways we have
favorite. This is the Tandberg remote control, and the color matched the colors on the screen, and it was one of the best. But look at how many buttons are on there. That's
yeah, and that's
intimidating
nothing.
to
The
those
ones I
kids on
remember were a
texting.
full-size keyboard that had all kinds of trackballs and everything on. But yes, but so we've come a long way in simplifying, excuse me, simplifying the meeting experience. But yet, the topic that we're talking about now is overcomplicated setups. So explain why we have this on this list.
Well, when you put something in a room, you really want the technology to become invisible. You want to be able to walk into the room, start your meeting, and go. And in most cases, you can't do that. First of all, you don't know how to start your meeting. If everybody in your organization is using the same platform and everybody's using the same type of gear, then you know where the one button to push is. That's a phrase that got coined by Cisco years ago, and
Yeah,
everybody's fine. But what if you're doing a call on a different platform? And what if you're doing a call that requires some remote people, but you have a whiteboard in the room? And what if you're doing a call where you've got some in the room, some in remote, but the person that's remote is actually presenting? Once you get past the beginning, hey, I'm looking at you and we're having a conversation, it gets kind of complicated. And in many cases, it's not necessary. Now, I'll preface that by saying for decades, for 30, maybe 40 years, we AV geeks built rooms for us. We built rooms so that in case, and I've said this before and people have made fun of it, in case a spaceship came in from space and they presented us with a computer we'd never seen before, there's a way to plug it in and it would work. It had to do everything. And what we found was users came back to us and said, nah, I wanted to do one thing really well. I wanted to do two things really well and really easy. I don't need the prepared for the 99th percentile case. I want it for the typical case that works in the room. And we've started to do that. We've started to make more simple gear, but you have to go look at it and make sure that the gear that you're putting in is appropriate for the room and is modern, which is another one of our points going forward.
yeah. So pro tips. Pro tips to simplify this. One is just standardizing equipment, and so you can't necessarily. We just talked about appropriate equipment for the right room size, but standardizing it within a vendor family, within a vendor's a meeting platform. So meetings do start consistently, and people know how to work the equipment. And then that never works completely because there's always some new product that you're evaluating and whatever. And so those exceptions need to have really clear instructions, laminated on the table, available so everyone can figure out how to work this stuff. And so it's just amazing to me how many meetings I'm in where people can't figure out how to do real basic stuff. I don't know how to do that. I can't figure it out.
And there's some resistance to the idea of the laminated instruction card in the room because what comes back is that it should be easy enough so that I don't need it. And that's not inherently wrong. There's no instruction card provided with a smartphone nowadays. People just figure it out. But what needs to happen is for these slightly more fringe cases, you need to communicate to everyone within your organization, this is how we handle it. Do you have to present from this computer? Do you have to do an interoperable call? Do you have to do this? These are the instructions how to do it. Know it. Do it that way every time. And some people learn from the laminated card. Some people learn from watching videos that have been posted online. Some people you need to
Yeah.
go hand over hand. But the point is, prepare for it in advance. Don't just let
Now,
it.
one thing, on a personal level, when I get confused about something, how do I change this battery in my car key fob, whatever? I go right to Google and I search it and I find a video very quickly. So, on one hand, that's kind of happening in the meeting rooms too. We're starting to get to the point where you could actually ask the room, "How do I do something?" It's not quite mainstream yet, but it's on the cutting edge, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Absolutely. All right. So the next thing on our list you want to go through is this concept of privacy. And I think it's actually really important. I've made this point in a lot of documents in the past, which is in order to get meeting summaries with attribution. So right
Wait,
now
wait,
the
wait, wait a minute, David. Are you allowed to say this publicly? Is this okay, or do we have to use some sort of sign language or something to make
No,
sure?
I'm allowed to say this publicly. I've opted
Okay,
in,
all
which
right.
is the key point. When you read a transcript of this meeting, if you ever read a transcript of this meeting, it's going to say that David Danto is talking as opposed to Dave Michels. It knows who I am. The reason it knows who I am is because I have opted in to say, yes, you can associate my voice and in some cases my face with me talking so that you always know what it is. and it's important that that be something that you opt in for, that it doesn't happen automatically. And it's a questionable, sticky situation. I had the debate with some folks from Zoom and some folks from Microsoft Online recently about this, where they're saying that even though the setting to do this in the organization is now been switched from default off to default on, I still have to opt in to allow it to recognize me.
Well, not
Do
necessarily, because you don't have to opt in, and it might just say speaker one, and it knows who every time
right.
speaker one talks, but it doesn't necessarily associate that with your name. But
But
we're
but
certainly,
here's my point, though, is that if I'm in an organization in this environment where hundreds of thousands of people are being laid off, and I'm the guy who says, no, I don't want you using my face, I don't want you using my voice, I don't want you to record that, is that going to reflect poorly on me? Can I really opt out of that, or is that the typical legal definition of duress and a contract under duress, or I'm afraid for my job? It's a very scary situation, and I don't think we have a resolution to it yet. We probably will once we get the first lawsuit, and it'll probably happen in Europe because GDPR is stronger than what we have in the U.S. But it scares me that we're leading to a point where everybody's saying, "Come on, jump off the mountain. Nothing's going to happen to you,"
yeah.
and I think something will.
But I think the main point that I wanted to make on the privacy issues is that we want to, and it's kind of not our problem, right? This is IT's departments. The company has to figure this stuff out, not me, the individual employee. And that's kind of the way it's been true with a lot of different IT systems, and that's kind of the way it's been true with meeting systems up until recently. The problem is with AI-based transcripts and AI training, and where the data is, whether these calls are being used for training data, whether the chat becomes discoverable or not in other systems. There's all kinds of issues, and it's getting so complicated that the corporate messaging is changing. Everyone's responsible for security, and they've been saying that for a while, but it's actually really becoming true. So everyone's responsible for security. The problem is nobody understands what's going on. And so I think it needs to be really clear. This is a kind of an enterprise training issue, but how are meetings stored, how are transcripts stored, needs to be kind of clear, and enterprises need to demonstrate the transparency with their employees if they want their employees to own it, to participate.
And if my voice and face are being recorded and archived by the organization that I work for in the world of AI we have nowadays, is there any reason why they can't use that likeness and voice to say whatever they want to say in the future? Who owns the digital rights to that? So
Yeah,
it's again, the first litigation is going to set the precedent for that, but we haven't hit it yet, so we're still in the Wild West phase.
yeah. All right. The next one here is actually one of my favorite topics, and one that we had some debate over when we were preparing for this conversation, about consumer gear in professional use cases. Um, and I've got a bunch of real strong opinions on this, and Mr. Danto does too. I was not expecting him to challenge me on the word consumer. You don't even like the word consumer, David.
No, we used to have consumer and professional gear in the world, and now, honestly, the truth for at least the last 5 or 10 years is it's all the same stuff. It might be boxed differently and named differently, but it's all the same chips, it's all the same cameras. The question is, are you getting something of high quality or not?
The reason I disagree with that is actually because a lot of IT products do have a consumer and business line. Like, you go buy a laptop, there's going to be a consumer cheap laptop for $300, and there's going to be a business entry level laptop for, $800. And that difference in price has different chips and different cameras. Cameras have come a long way in laptops. It took a long time just to get cameras to 720, but there's still a lot of really crappy laptop cameras out there, and laptops even have worse microphones and whatnot. And the thing is, you don't think about this in meeting rooms, but if everybody's working from home and everybody's working at coffee shops, and then or coffee shops might be a bad example because you might be using a headset, but even headsets are another whole story. There's definitely consumer class headsets and business class headsets. So my point is that there's definitely a lot of consumer gear out there that IT doesn't necessarily think they own. It's not their problem. If you're using your own little personal headset, that's great. But you have to be aware that if you're using really crappy gear, people can't hear you or see you very well.
Well,
And
This
Yeah, go
situation
ahead.
got exacerbated during the pandemic, the earliest days of the pandemic, where all of a sudden everybody was working from home and not everybody was prepared to. So, do I bring my monitor from the office? Do I bring my notebook with it? And what should have been done then, and for the most part wasn't, is organizations should have standardized what their policy is for gear for people that are remote. It should be you're using your own laptop or you're using our laptop or you're using this kit and this setup, and it would have
Yep,
standardized the quality. And we missed that opportunity. And I don't know if it's going to come back again the way the politics are running around work from home and BYOD and all the rest of it. But
yep,
what's interesting is the cameras, as you point out on the notebooks, have come a long way. If you remember, there was a rush on any type of external USB camera because a lot of notebooks didn't have them, and the ones they had were terrible. That's pretty much passed. The cameras that are in notebooks right now are actually pretty good. I mean, the number of megapixels on our phone are outstanding right now. What hasn't
yep,
changed, you're still running into people that are talking into their computer. And I have one in front of me, and they talk, where is the speaker? Where is the microphone? What kind of audio
yep.
cancellation? You always want to have some type of external device, be it a headset or a puck of some type. Jobber makes them and Poly makes
Yeah,
them.
and
You-
what is this? You recommended this one to me. What is this?
oh, cardioid
HyperX.
microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, very
Also an
inexpensive. And
also an HP product, by the way. But it's a hypercardioid system where it's going to give you much better audio, and you don't need to see it on camera. You don't need to wear a headset, but it only works like I am now in my home office, and I assume you are as well, because there's no noise going on around here. If I have other
yeah,
people in the room, if my wife's on her meeting at the other end of the room, then I must wear a headset. So it's all the other answer is it's also not only one thing that you need. You need multiple things depending upon your situation.
yeah. No, I think there's and so and I'm going to defend webcams. You said that the laptop cams have gotten so much better. Um, I just got my wife Logi Brio. They make about 700 different models now, I think. But the feature that she liked actually that surprised me because I'm like, oh, look at this camera, and then rattling off all these incredible specs because that's who I am. And she's like, oh, but I like that shutter. It physically closes, and that's what she liked. But webcams are fantastic. They're inexpensive
Huh?
and they have better microphones and they solve a lot of problems. And so, and this kind of goes back to we talked above about simplifying things. We didn't really talk about simplifying the management, but if you stick with one brand, you can update the firmware. You can often manage these things more easily remotely or centralized. A lot of benefits. And so I strongly recommend enterprises kind of not to treat this as just junk and just buy whatever's on sale, but to put together a plan about what they
Yeah.
should use.
It's that whole idea of that last mile, that last inch, whatever it is. You're only as good. If you're running a $20 million platform through a 599 device, that's what it's going to look like. That's
I
definitely
don't I don't know what you mean by last inch. I deal with centimeters. I've gone metric, man.
centimeters, millimeters. Yeah, I
Well,
read read something.
America is inching toward the metric system. We'll just leave it at that. So the next category here is legacy hardware.
It's kind
I
of the same
mentioned
thing.
before. Well, yeah, it is kind of the same thing. The problem is, it's when you talk about headsets and microphones, it's cheap little things. But sometimes companies spend, $10,000 or whatever on a room system, and they just don't have the heart to throw it out. So they just keep on moving it down the hall to a different older room, and they keep on upgrading the top room. And you get down, 6 doors down the hall, and this stuff is getting pretty darn old. I mean, it's really time to retire this stuff.
And
Uh,
all of the features that we talked about, where the cameras aim themselves, so you don't need the silly remote, where the audio knocks out some of the processing issues and it sounds a lot better, and all those things that we've come to understand are part of video now, and all of these improvements we had over the last 5 years don't mean a thing if you haven't upgraded your gear in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. It's time
yeah.
to get some of these features to save money, to save headaches, to be more monitorable and more actionable. So I think that in terms of a category that we would be ending this conversation with, that's definitely one that I think is really important, which is use modern gear, because you're missing out on so many capabilities if you don't have modern equipment in your rooms.
Now there's a gray area between modern and legacy. And so in that gray area in between, update firmware, make sure it's still supported. You know, it's either alive and well and part of the family, or it's out. That's my advice.
Yeah, does the
All right, well,
manufacturer even support the version that it's on anymore?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, uh, you call up support, and they have, it's like, and they have no idea. There's not even an employee there anymore that remembers how to work that gear.
Yeah.
Um, uh, the Okay, I'm not going to. I've got some examples in my head, but I'm not going to pick on anybody. Um, last one. Let's wrap it up here with a purely training issue. You want to lead it off, David?
Just make sure that people understand that an email doesn't need to be a meeting, and a meeting doesn't need to last 4 hours. And you want to make sure, if you got remote people on a call, that you've given them a chance to speak, and that you've got an agenda. I mean, it's just human preparation. It's literally that simple. Don't step into a meeting you haven't prepared for. Have the disagreement that Dave and I had just before we did this recording, so that we know where we stand and we're prepared to talk about these things.
It's more than that even. I mean, the problem is they don't teach this stuff in college. Meeting etiquette is not something that's covered, and so there's just a lot of things that different companies have different cultures, and it needs to be more spoken, needs to be more clear, And so, for example, is it acceptable to have your camera off during a meeting, and are you supposed to mute when you're in listening mode, or are you not supposed to mute? And you just kind of have to set some expectations. And the problem is, no one, like I said, it's not covered. It's not covered in employee orientation. So there needs to be some pretty clear expectations. It should be covered in employee orientation. This is the way we do meetings here, and meetings have become a big part of the modern workday. I mean, it's
Yeah, I've been making that argument that collaboration technology should be an orientation probably my entire career. And we haven't had any traction, and that's like 40 or something years. So good luck with that. But yes, it needs to be communicated to an organization. This is how we do things here. Otherwise, people won't know, because asking a neighbor is like sending a teenager out and asking about the birds and the bees from somebody on the street. If you want them to understand the truth and how you want it perceived, you got to tell them yourself. Or Dave, thanks for having the conversation with me and bringing out a lot of these important subjects, because I think it is important that people understand this. And thank you very much for watching, as you do every week. This is David Danto. We will see you next week.